Okay, we are in study week for spring 2020. So I thought I'd put together a quick video sort of summarizing the semester. And I'm going to bring up the presentation. All right, so here is the presentation. This is actually pretty similar to the presentation I started the semester with. So hopefully you'll see some similarity there. So biomechanics of endurance performance, 456 or 656. What is biomechanics? Well, we always have to start with a definition of biomechanics. In this case, biomechanics is a science which investigates motion and the action of forces, both internal and external forces, including statics, dynamics, kinematics, the study of motion, and kinetics, study of forces that cause movement that occur during the actions performed by a living organism, for example, a human being. Or a more simpler definition is something like this, which is more applied to kinesiology, biomechanics, and physical activity, is the study of the movements and the structure and function of human beings using mechanical principles of physics and engineering. But when I get caught on the street and someone asks me what I do and I say I teach biomechanics, they say, "What's that?" I say it's the physics of sport. So as such, because it is the physics of sport, we need to know things about some physics. So we need to know some equations. We need to know some terms. You need to know these equations and terms going into the final exam. I've got a number of videos and I'll post a summary of all the video links that you can go back and look at to review the terms covered in this worksheet that's posted in Web Canvas. And you'll see that our focus this semester has really been on kinetics. And so keep that in mind that the number of questions will be more geared towards kinetics versus kinematics in the final exam. All right, but really what this course is designed to do is sort of explain how biomechanics fits in the broader scheme of kinesiology. What's kinesiology? It's the scientific study of human movement. And human movement is achieved through a complex interaction between the human and the environment that involves sensory information, perception. You have to have a goal for the movement, and you have some motor signals, you have feedback, what have you. Very complex process. But what we set out to do this semester is really figure out where kinesiology, where biomechanics fits within kinesiology. And throughout the semester, we've talked about different technology, which I think is really an important part of this class, where we talk about wearable tech devices, GPS devices, heart rate monitors, accelerometers, what have you, that you can wear during exercise to quantify how much exercise you're doing or what intensity you're doing the exercise at. And we also talked about different programs like Training Peaks, Strava, Garmin Connect, Zwift. These programs are all really pretty sophisticated for not only keeping an electronic record of your exercise or people who are exercising, but also using all those data points to try to design training programs, which is something you are learning in kinesiology, is how to train someone. And so it is important to know what software is available out there for you to work with different athletes. And I've gone through some of that through this semester. So, but we've really been focusing on the physics of sports like swimming, and we've talked about propulsive forces, we've talked about resistance forces during swimming, factors that affect each of those, how to measure some of those forces as well. And that's been an important part of this class. We've also talked about biomechanics, physics of biomechanics, of biking, from frame design to wheel design to generating power while on the bike, and how to transfer the force that's being applied to the pedal to the force that actually propels the runner forward. And the top left is muscle activity. We did not do much on muscle activity during this semester, but that's another really interesting part of understanding the physics of cycling, is which muscles are being used during a pedal stroke. Then we also did the physics of running, and we focused on the ground reaction force that we see during running, which is a three-dimensional force acting on the person. We didn't do too much with this part in terms of pronation and supination, but we did go through, or I have a video on shoe design, and I am actually still setting up one more interview with a shoe manufacturer, but unfortunately, I don't think I'll have that done in time for this semester, but hopefully you have enough interest and you want to come back and watch that video with a shoe manufacturer. So in the beginning of the semester, I went through this model of understanding kinesiology from a perspective of performance. And performance is nothing more than a bunch of movements put together. That's functional anatomy. When we start looking at movements, we're in the branch of mechanics of kinematics, the study of movement with regardless of the forces acting on the object. Kinematics occur because of kinetics, which is the study of forces causing movement. And we need to know Newton's laws of motion, law of inertia, acceleration and action reaction. And forces are being generated either by muscles or they're being applied on the body externally, gravity, ground reaction force, but internal forces coming from muscles, really joints, it's going to be bone on bone, ligaments, tendons, things like that are also generating forces. If you have taken or are going to take 457, which is physiology of endurance performance, we spend a little bit more time in this area in terms of transforming chemical energy to mechanical energy aerobically or anaerobically. Muscles, what do they do, or what they're asked to do? That's controlled by the central nervous system, which tells the muscles when to fire, how much to fire, when to react, what have you, maybe pre-activation prior to some event. Those forces cause displacements in times. Those displacements in times are movements. Those movements are put together, and we call that a performance. Now, if we look at kinesiology as a whole, there's all different areas influencing kinesiology. And to the right of central nervous system, I think my picture's covering it, is environment. Even things like environment, temperature, wind, humidity, those factors influence what the central nervous system does, but also psychological factors, perception of how hard you think exercise is, or how motivation, or who's watching, and what kind of pressure there is to perform will influence what the brain does, which ultimately influences what muscles do and what forces are generated, and ultimately what kinematics result from that. So to understand performance, we really need to have all these areas and others in our back pocket. We need to know sports psychology, we need to know motor control, coordination, motor learning, exercise physiology, sports medicine, biomechanics. And so this class was really focused in on the biomechanics part, and hopefully you've learned how to apply biomechanics to performance, in this case, a focus on human performance in the endurance world. Okay, I'm trying to advance my slide, and it's not advancing. Okay, here we go. Okay, so why biomechanics of endurance performance? Well, it's partly because that's my background. I enjoy it. That's what got me involved with kinesiology, but also because there's a huge amount of growth in endurance events, from marathons, Ironman events, ultra events. Lots of people are participating in endurance performance. And therefore, students who finish with a degree in kinesiology often are interacting with people in endurance events, whether it's training someone or rehabilitating them from an injury or helping them with nutrition, what have you. Very common for our students to interact with people doing some type of endurance event, getting training advice and injury prevention advice. All right, so when we set out the semester, what was our goal? Well, our goal was to understand how basic laws and principles that govern motion of human beings affect the structure, function, and performance of the human, and really are focused on endurance events. And endurance, what's that? It's the ability to withstand extraordinary mental or physical stress for a prolonged period. That's just from Taber's Medical Dictionary. Or another definition is just the ability to continue despite pain, fatigue, and stress. And so the endurance events that we were looking at were things like marathons, 26.2 miles, or Ironman events, like swim 2.4 miles, bike 112, run 26.2, or even doing a sprint event, which is so much shorter, that may take an hour or 2 hours to do versus 8 to 16 and 17 hours. Nevertheless, those are endurance events. They take time to do, and you have to be able to generate a force over a long period of time. What is this course about, or what was this course about at this point? Well, it's applying biomechanical concepts to understand endurance performance. So knowing that, the final exam is going to be on how well you know biomechanic terminology, and are you able to apply that terminology correctly to endurance events. This course is not a math course, so I don't have, I think, any math questions on the exam. If they are math questions, they're very straightforward and really just checking knowledge of an equation, but it's not a math course. It's not a physics course even, although we need to know our physics to understand biomechanics. The key with this class, and this is built around the semester project, the service project, is really knowing how to take biomechanic terms and apply them to understand endurance performance. So level one, you got to know the biomechanics terms. You got to know the equations, units, and definitions of those terms in order to apply them. So the final exam, well, you need to know your terminology. So make sure you've gone through the worksheet and you can define everything quickly. You can come up with equations and you can have the right set of units. Really, really important. The next level of questions in the final exam will be an application of terminology and really focused on the endurance events, and even more so focused on kinetics. We talked about doing kinetic analysis of swim, bike, and run. Really talked about the drag force equation, 1/2 rho CdAv squared. We've talked about the drag force equation from a resistance force as well as a propulsion force. We talked about buoyancy force because that's sort of a new force that we cover in this class. And then quite a bit on power. In fact, I posted a link to a video of Lionel Sanders doing a KOM, King of the Mountain, attempt for a race. And you'll see how much biomechanics knowledge he has or that we need to have when we start listening to that video and seeing how he is attempting to go as fast as he can across a particular segment. And it's a pretty neat video, and pretty neat to see the terms that he uses, and we need to make sure that they're being used correctly ultimately when we're having those conversations with people. So who are we trying to help? Yeah, it could be the elite athletes, but really very few of us will be working with elite athletes. More so, we're going to be working with mere mortals. This is just an example. Someone who contacted me at one point, the coach of my team, said it's best for me to go with buying a long sleeve wetsuit. Is that because I'm more aerodynamic, or is it because a better long-term investment? I'd rather not wear a wetsuit at all if I didn't need it for speed and the water was warm enough to be comfortable. So how do we give people like this advice on equipment selection or even training to prepare for, in this case, a swim event? So really, this course was focused more on mere mortals, those of us who are trying to complete an event, or maybe an age grouper who's really very competitive as well. A broad range of folks, but I don't want to lose sight, or I never wanted to lose sight in this class that was just about elite athletes. And hopefully, at this point in the semester, you're feeling like you've reached the finish line and you're happy. Many of you are finishing your degree this semester. Congratulations. I wish I was there in person to give you a high five, but hopefully you are able to celebrate the finish line of earning your degree. Okay, thanks everybody. I think that's it for this lecture. Let me stop sharing. And thanks again for a semester. I'm going to post some final notes in the study week module. And please message me if you have any questions in prepping for the exam. Have a good day.